All right, so here we go. Come on in, Corey. We are working on the assignment that's coming up due for Tuesday. Radio reader and rap scripts. All right. No, we did that. We're doing 2 story ideas coming up for Tuesday, September 19th.
Don't mind doing it again.
Don't mind doing them again. Well, you'll have a chance to do something quite similar to build on what we learned from the good work that we analyzed last class, all of us together. So, you know, the fundamentals there of writing a lead, of, you know, we looked into a little bit towards active sentence structure. We looked a little bit towards simplifying some things, making them more direct and such. Well, obviously, all of our assignments will deal with that. And then also we will have some more that we keep on loading in as we go forward and do different types of scripts. So before we jump into the chapter with the information that you were to read, I just wanted to talk to you more, hear your ideas. Obviously this is not due till Tuesday, so I want to know what you guys are thinking of doing for this assignment. If you know, that way we can help all of us come to picking some good topics that we can work on, right? And again, it's understandable that because your choice of topics here is going to, you know, bear upon 3 subsequent assignments. You know, you're going to pick some things to report on, and then you're going to have to write about them in 3 different ways. So it's good to pick something which will lend itself to that. And if I hear it, the sooner I hear it, the better. And if I hear it next Tuesday, I can still give you feedback on it and stuff. So let's just look over this again. So this assignment is very easy to write. There's no format. This is all about getting yourself ready to have 2 topics to report on. This is called pitching in the writing business. So typically pitches would be emailed to a managing editor of a publication. If the publication you'd like to write for is a single paranoid bloviator, it doesn't take any submissions, you're out of luck. But in general, you would be looking for a managing editor that you could email and say, hey, do you take freelance work? I want to write about this topic to you. And you would write the kind of things that I'm asking you about in this assignment. However, this happens by email, it happens over the phone, and probably happens by text, I don't know. So there's no format for this. It's easy to write. It requires 2 paragraphs. What's hard is to figure out what you want to do and to do something viable. Nick?
So after we do the first 2, then we have to attend the event and then interview them there?
Exactly. Correct. If, you know, we talked about your timeline may not fall exactly, you know, as I said, Nick asked a great question. One of the things you want to do is, one of the stories you have to present as an event. So Nick said, well, what if the event is 2 months from now? Because the first script you have to write about this is 3 weeks from now. So I said, well, do something where you can interview the people who are preparing for this event. So even if it doesn't happen yet, you know. So we had someone do a story about, they do an outdoor hockey game in San Jose every year or something. So it was preparing the ice rink for, you know, like how do you do an ice rink outside in San Jose weather? I thought that was a really cool, intriguing story idea, you know. And the game wasn't going to happen, but he could, you know, obviously someone interested in sports journalism, he could go and get the information already. So, yeah. So yes, the real world test of these ideas, it's got to be someone you can talk to within the time frame of the further assignments we're going to do on this. Another question, Nick?
So once we interview them there, do we ask them, like, how do you feel being here now, or
well,
after the fact?
Yeah, looking ahead to the next steps in this, I will ask you to submit some interview questions. So that's where you would come up with a list of questions to ask to that person. And, you know, you're all free to work out the questions you want, but the kinds of questions that actually yield interesting results come from thinking, okay, what does my audience want to know about this? They probably don't care about what that person feels about it unless they're going to go, jump off a cliff or something. And then it's like, yeah, that anyone would figure, how can you do that, or even, get mobilized for active service. But if it's like, how do you feel about, putting ice on a skating rink in San Jose? The questions would be more technical. It's like, how do you get the ice not to melt? How many people are involved? How long does this take? How do you keep it cold? So questions would be different. Think about what a normal audience member looking at this thing would want to know. Carmen?
Can it be an online event?
Yes, it could. Yeah, as long as you can get, contact with people who are organizing it or involved in it, right? Okay. So that could be fine. So let's look at the questions that I said, the stuff you need to cover about an event, because I ask you to figure out an event and figure out a profile story that you could do. So the event, the first thing is just the basics, right? Who, what, when, where of the event, so that won't take you long to pull that together. Where would you find background information about the event? Because when you go to interview somebody, we'll see when we talk about it, you got to go informed. Before you do an interview, you don't arrive there, so, oh, I don't know anything about this, just tell me about it, That's not good enough, because they see people all the time and they have no time to talk to someone who hasn't done their prep. So what they expect from a professional reporter is prep, that you come already knowing, and you got to show it off a little bit. So I see on your website that you do this every year around this, I don't know, you do your research. So where would you find that information before? Usually they've got a website, they've done something to reach out, especially if it's an event, because they're trying to get people to go, right? Next up, in 1 or 2 sentences, sum up what you think will happen at the event. So,
Actually,
JP?
what do you mean by background information?
Well, background kind of means the kinds of, okay, there's an event coming up on September 24th. The background is, what can you find out? Who's organizing it? How many times has it happened before? What's the context for it? If it's, if it's an online meetup about diversity in the gaming industry, what's the context for that? Has there been, a lot of controversy around that issue? Have other people been writing about it? So it's really what you can find out about it. Again, with the thought, what does your audience know about it? What have they already heard about it? You should know at least as much as your average audience member has learned about it, knows about it. Carmen, are you moderating chat there a little bit for us?
I'm going to. I'm trying to log in.
Appreciate it so much, because anybody else who wants once in a while to mod just to make sure those voices are heard. Last class it was excellent. We even read scripts from people who were not present, so that was cool. I appreciate it. Who are the major people to whom you should talk to about this event? You will need to actually interview one of these persons in the next 2 weeks. Who will it be? What is their contact information? Have they confirmed that they would like to talk to you? Interviewing over the phone or by email is fine, okay? And this is always the hardest part of these assignments, is to get someone who can actually talk to you. And in addition to that, someone who actually knows something. So again, you'd never get a very interesting piece from someone who's just a kind of an ignorant bystander. It's like, oh, I interviewed somebody about, they went to this event 3 years ago and they have a couple of memories of it. That's not a very good person to talk to. What you want to do is take the extra effort and find someone who actually knows about the thing, which could involve cold calling, and tell them you're a student, tell them this is for a class project, it'll never be broadcast, assure them if they would like, you can probably, this is up to you, but I usually say you can see the questions in advance. I do want to record this, not to ever put it out anywhere else, but I need to record it for my own information so I can take notes. So that's usually what you need to prep people for when you're going to talk to them. Corey?
You said an email interview would be fine.
Yeah.
How would we go about doing some sort of...
Well, they'll write back to you,
Okay.
right? So
Just be a record of...
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know, you never, in this day and age, you always want to have some kind of record and, you know.
Just something to reference back to.
Yeah, exactly. It's easier for you,
Yeah.
you know, and like some reporters still take steno and, you know, they write shorthand. They know how to do it, but we don't expect to do that, yeah.
We're fresh in the game, so we need something for reference.
Yeah. And, you know, in the real world for legal protections as well, you know, so you actually have notes that even if they're rough notes, they could subpoena them and ask, you know, like, okay, let's see that. So, so who are the major people to whom you should talk to about this event? So, you know, it all depends, right, on what you're working on. What is the significance of the event to your audience? Why should they care enough to read or watch your story? Okay, so this addresses an insecurity which is quite understandable. You figure, well, you know, I don't know anything that's really important that I want to report on. You know, we think that the news comes out of Washington or Sacramento or you know, City Hall here, and we don't know anybody doing that. But the event could be a community event as well. You know, like a food giveaway or you know, tons, just there's limitless options. Nothing is too local for us. But then just assume that, like if you're reporting on a, you know, food giveaway in the Richmond, maybe you're probably going to put this onto, again, you don't have to publish this, but you might be considering, you know, on Nextdoor or on a neighborhood blog. In that case, what would your readership in the Richmond like to know about this? You know, they might like to know about maybe more names of people involved who could be their neighbors or something like that, or more information about where, when it is, more locality. Like these things involve, you know, again, they change for everything, but what I'm trying to say is there's an audience for, no matter how local your reporting is, there's an audience for it. You know, it might not be the New York Times, right? But it would be a local neighborhood blog or, you know, a podcast that you do on your neighborhood, something like that, which would be a cool thing to do. That would be something you could think about. So the main thing is to keep on thinking, what do they want to know? All right? So this works against the idea that, hey, I want to make people in the class laugh. You know, that's like big deal. You know, I mean, it's like if you want to make your readership laugh, and it's a comedy kind of outlet, okay. But that's the thing. You're thinking about, what do readers actually want to know? 6, describe what you will need to do to cover the event and write a news story about it. So that's just to make sure you're thinking about getting organized now rather than in 2 weeks when it'll be too late, okay? So it's just like, oh, who do I need to call? I need to find out, you know, who the press relations person is for this event, and then I need to call them, and I need to set up an interview, and I need to have my recorder, and these are the steps you'll take. So questions about those things? It's pretty obvious, but that would just be put into a paragraph. And as I said, if you were pitching professionally to, as a freelancer, to another publication or website or video production place, this is what they would want to know. Is this viable? Is this person serious? Do they know anything about this? Are they, you know, organized enough to get this done for us so we can make space for it? That's all. Any ideas about events? Corey and then Nick?
Well, there's a local wrestling promotion.
You guys, it's totally fine to do the same thing. No problem.
Side of the story, Nick.
Were you about Jim Morris?
Well, one of them. But basically, they have shows. They have one show at their little compound, but when they branch out to other parts of the Bay Area, they have a benefit for. There's one for Jefferson High School. There's one for the Boys and Girls Club over in North Shore. So I wanted to interview them about kind of how they get all that together and how they're using something that's kind of viewed as, you know, weird or stupid to help the community.
Fantastic. Yeah, you have. I mean, it's intrinsically an interesting kind of activity. Plus, you got the community service aspect there too. You know who to talk to? Have you got an idea?
Well, right now, the only person I know is the person that runs it.
That's a good start, I gotta say. Yeah.
But I don't know how busy he is, so I'm gonna just kind of message their Facebook page to see if I can get in contact if anyone that they have a press.
Okay. Okay, cool, cool. And Nick, were you thinking?
I was thinking the same thing as Corey here, but to maybe interview one of the wrestlers who's going to be competing in the show.
Okay,
He's a alumni of the Jefferson High School.
so you have a connection to reach out to.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, that would be really cool if you report on the same event and get two sides of it, you know, two angles on it. That would be great. Nice. Good job, guys. So,
Thank you.
yeah, you just want to go fast. And what I was going to say, Corey, was that there's still a lot of phone calling going on in this type of writing as well. You know, because the whole asynchronous leave a Facebook ping or something like that is, you know, it's too easy for them to ignore.
Yeah, I'll definitely try to look on their website, see if I can find any phone number I can call and then contact them. Because I know before when contacting them, the only thing I could find was an email address and then just their Facebook page. So
Got you.
I'll look harder though.
Got you. Yeah. No. Yeah.
Contacting Marcus individually.
Cool. Other ideas for events? Nika?
So I have three ideas. There's a farmer's market in the Inner Sunset that I could check out. I could see what the SF Jazz Hall, if they have any events planned, and I know a couple docents there I could check
Okay.
out. And pretty much the same thing with the San Francisco Zoo. I know some old docents from my work there, so I could check out and see what events they have.
Got you. So something outside of ordinary operations coming up. Okay. So, and your contacts are those docents that you know? Yeah, cool. And then for the farmers market, do you have any
I know
ins there?
I know a couple of the farmers, and I've talked to one of the people who runs it before.
Oh, cool. Okay. It's all set. Does, by the way, feel free to add any, you know, if you guys happen to know anybody who's, you know, I don't know, works at the SF Jazz or something like that. Sometimes in the room, we've got people who can create connections that are really helpful, or if anyone knows any wrestlers. Which, very impressed that you know some wrestlers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other ideas for an event? Yeah, Ryan?
There's like a food truck thing I go to all the time, like every week. Is that
It's a what? Sorry?
food truck meetup spot in the Haight?
Oh, okay. So it's just like a bunch of food trucks and people are checking it out?
They like take over the skate park every Thursday, so I always see it there, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Gotcha. Carmen, do you have something to add for Ryan? Or?
Oh, no, but he reminded me of something.
Oh, okay. Well,
The event. In about 2 weeks, I believe, or less than 2 weeks, San Francisco Public Library is having their big book sale down at Fort Mason.
okay.
And that's always a big event because it's like 2 to 3 days of any books that they have in this huge warehouse.
Yeah.
$3 and under, and then on Sundays it's just $1.
Yeah. Yeah.
In theory, I'm supposed to volunteer for one of the days. It depends if things work out, but that's a possibility. And to like talk
Cool.
to the organizers about that.
That's a good event. That's a good event. And
The Fort Mason?
having some kind of angle going in is good. We had a story on the book sale that was a little underwhelming because it was basically, I'm here in the book sale and there's a lot of books. And as I walked down the aisle, you know, and it was, you know what I mean? It's cool, but I think you'll have to work, you know, think about when you're there. I mean, you're chasing down like.
Well, they have like scavenger hunts that if you follow the
There you
Twitter
go.
account, it's like
There you go. There you
And
go.
then there's people who are buying like a whole cart. You would think that would be interesting. Like, why are you buying so many?
So many books. Okay, I love it. Okay. You know, I don't mean to disparage your idea just by referring to some mediocre work, but what I'm saying is sometimes you got to be fast on your feet about it, and you will be, I'm sure. But it's I'm just looking at what we were looking at before because you're reminding me of these intrinsic storytelling values, and oddity is one of them. And your examples as to, hey, what would I work on here to make this, you know, more than, hey, there's just there's a bunch of books here. So we focus on these rarities and highlight the elements that make them different from everyday occurrences. So a book sale in itself is a little humdrum, but somebody with 45 pounds of books is interesting. The other angle you brought up is like, so what's Twitter doing, the newest of new media doing with the oldest of old media, you know? So that's an interesting angle too, yeah. So, and I guess, Ryan, that would probably go for you too. You know, the danger is it's like, there's a lot of food here. There's Vietnamese food, there's Indian food, there's another type of food and another type of food. You know, that is you know, that's, you can do it, but can you find something that stands out a little bit more due to, you know, again, some when we look at profiles, it's almost a bit of a cliche, but it's also really useful. It's like, is there somebody there who has just moved heaven and earth to get a food truck? Or is there somebody there who is like a 4-star gourmet, food truck that is changing the value of the whole event or something? That's what I'm trying to say, you know? Because otherwise it's just, I can go down to the food trucks, but you gotta keep looking as you're there. But, Carmen?
Enrique from chat says there's an LGBT Latino group called Hermanos. They're going to be having an upcoming fundraiser. And then Brian says that he does a couple of hip-hop events for fundraisers that are coming up too.
Okay, so both of those events might be interesting. Yeah. So depending on the timeline, you're either looking at the setup for this event, or you're looking at actually attending the event and finding stuff out. Either way, but yeah. So those are both viable events. You know, I think the impression I'm trying to give is a lot of events would lend themselves to this, but what you want to do is dig deeper into them to find, you know, stories that are catching people's attention due to, well, conflict as well might be another thing, but go to a City College Board of Governors meeting. There's an event that will certainly yield some kind of conflict. You may need to dig to understand the context of like why they're fighting, but you could definitely do something like that too if you wanted. Okay, other ideas?
Apparently there's a free festival at Mint SF every third Friday of the month. Miko brought up.
Mint SF?
Yeah.
Is that where they mint the money?
Well, we do have the Mint, but I don't know if that's what...
No, I don't know what it is. What is Mint SF?
It's the old Mint. Basically, where they used to print money downtown is they turned it into like a nightclub type gallery.
Oh, cool.
I know I had a friend, she had an art show, and it was at the Mint. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it looks really cool on the inside too.
Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, when you finally write a script, it's tough because it's tough to sell something on visuals because we're writing scripts. But obviously, if you went with a video product in mind, the visuals are actually really important. But yeah, so there, you know, again, it's maybe like, what's so special about this gallery, this event? You know, whose work are we showing? Why should we care about their work? And that might, you know, if it's work of a particular group of artists or something, maybe that would connect with an audience or something, and you could start in on it that way. You know, over the summer, Mary Mendoza, she just did a lot of work already. She's done a lot of work on art in the Mission. You know, so all of her stories were about that, and it was great because it was always, you know, mission-based artists, Latino identity, community groups and stuff, and it was, you know, a very nice focus for her. So that's something to think about anyway. But, you know, for that reason, then if you're doing pieces about that group of artists, you're probably going to be targeting it at an audience who's, you know, interested in those people. Cool. So, you know, if people come to me and they say, well, I don't know which one, should I do this one or should I do that one? I always say, well, do the one where you're sure you're going to get somebody that you can talk to. So sometimes that means it's not your sexiest idea, but it's the one that you're sure you can get, you know, what you need to get in the time frame. Okay, cool. So then profile. Writing a profile, oh, I see I've been on this. Okay, so a profile is a little different. This is where you talk about a person who's doing something interesting, and or that could be their life's work, or it could be an exhibition that's coming up, or and you're profiling a person. So the profile is I guess here the trap is to think you've got someone who's intrinsically interesting, and then you just talk to them. Actually, the way profiles work and are successful is when you can conform a person's narrative to a narrative that your audience already knows and understands. So as I say, the big cliche is like overcoming adversity. I mean, that is a narrative that we can all understand. And I still sometimes get tears in my eyes when a very effective profile is, told to me about. I mean, I was just listening to Terry Gross on NPR yesterday, on 9/11, the anniversary of 9/11, talking to a first responder who had an 8,000-pound piece of steel fall on his foot and basically crush it in one go. And he became an activist fighting for, first responders' rights to health care and stuff like that. I mean, they were dumped, And he spent like the last 10 years fighting to make sure people get health care and stuff. Even talking about it, I get little chills, because it fits. It's still overcoming adversity, but it fits, So I wouldn't want to have to tick off the 5 greatest tropes of profile storytelling. But they exist. Oh, I can't, but there you go. But can anyone come up with any others, perhaps, rather than overcoming adversity? A lot of them are maybe just variations of it, Having a great challenge and succeeding when the challenge is there. Huh?
They're on this list.
Are they?
Yeah, they're on this.
Oh, there you go. Sorry. It's like I don't have time to review everything I put out at you, unfortunately. So there we go. Common themes include overcoming adversity, succeeding against the odds, which could also be overcoming adversity, coping with failure. There's an interesting one, right? We're a culture that only cares about winners. If you can tell a good story about somebody who made a good thing, a good thing out of a bad thing, that's good. I was almost trying to cite some popular culture thing about lemonade, and then I thought, that's desperate. So forget it. Stick to it this way. But illness or serious problems. Somebody who's just trying to do plain good. I think I mentioned the story about the old guy in some neighborhood, which is pretty tough neighborhood, who just organized the kids 10 years and younger, just trying to get them into something, lemonade stands and stuff, completely informally, just doing it like a year after year. So those are some of them anyway. But I'd love to hear for more. I could add them to my list. When you tell a story about somebody, like what other kinds of things would you tell? Rags to riches, if you want to honor the rich, that's a big thing for us. Right?
Homecoming story.
Nick, excellent. I'm going to add that in later on. Homecoming, a kind of a homecoming.
Oh.
Nika?
I think kind of the Silicon Valley story, finding something that we never knew we needed, or a new way to do something that we always thought could only be done in this one way.
Interesting idea. If you have access to an entrepreneur, I think that kind of story is a...
We've got something similar.
Do you? For a profile? Who are you thinking of talking to?
So there's this, I go to this, the best way to describe it is it's like a small concert venue. This retired older man turned like the upper floor of his house into a small venue for just traveling folk bands.
Cool.
And he's just this old guy, and he doesn't really do much else, and I thought I could do it on him.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Yeah.
Just the way it's like it's really cheap, and it's really the only way to see these bands. So.
Gotcha. Yeah. We had a student named Cole. I can't remember his last name, but he was into the punk scene, and his initial thing was, punk club getting closed down, but then a lot of people were doing them, concerts in their basement because it's hard to get that. So actually that story turned into, more of like, where can you find these types of shows in the Bay Area and stuff. It worked out really well, actually. Similar kind of like, create your own venue DIY thing. But this is also interesting because an older person and a different type of music. Interesting idea. Other profile ideas, again, I don't think you can really go wrong, but you're looking for a compelling narrative to craft around this person. Ideas?
Maybe about their business? Like,
If they're particularly successful, or if they're not successful, but they're doing things.
To like an indie game festival where it's Google chose 20 of like up and coming indie game developers to promote their current game.
That makes them
So it would
interesting.
be interviewing one particular game developer on their game. So I would think the profile would then be about like their game company.
I mean, that could just turn out to be like corporate portraiture or something, but if you can get more out of this person's biography or their way of doing things, then I think that would be viable. The very fact that Google put them on a list, makes them sort of famous in a minor way. It's like, okay, we're going to talk to one of these people who's been validated by being on the list. But then if it's simply, and then we got a first round of money and it was like $10,000 or so, it's like, okay, but why? But I think if you can find more of a kind of a philosophy from them or something, then I think you're working with something good. Yeah, Jenny?
I was just thinking of pets because I recall back to my reader or rap, one of them focused on
The ARF.
the ARF and a few other organizations, but the pets themselves also have stories. Granted, they can't tell us directly because we don't understand meow and rough, but maybe some of the owners or the rescue directors know their backdrop and we could speak to them. I mean, would that be considered a profile?
You could, and it's kind of intriguing, if cats could talk or something, and then you'd have, Cat Whisperer, so on and so on, is going to talk to us about it. It could be a kind of a cute story, Or
like what I was thinking is speaking to, say, the director or handler of that pet that was rescued from, say, for example, hardship. And is them, that handler or that director, that would know the backdrop of the animal.
Yeah.
The animal would be the entity you're profiling.
Yeah, if you could move quickly to find that person and that animal, then I'd say it's viable, sure. I could see the interest in it, but I could see the challenge is, finding someone who actually has that connection with an animal, and the animal would have an interesting story. It's like, well, here's an animal that was, I don't know, recovered in from a car accident or something.
Or
the soul.
Formerly abused.
Right. Yeah. Or maybe animals coming out of disaster areas or something. So we had a story last semester about dogs being adopted out of Puerto Rico. And the connection was the student writing the piece knew personally the director of the nonprofit that was setting this up. But apparently there's just 1 million stray dogs dumped on this beach in Puerto Rico and left to fend for themselves or maybe die. Because there's there's not a public spaying and neutering program down there. So they just have tons of strays. And so there's this nonprofit which is trying to help the situation. And she spoke to someone who was adopting a dog through this organization, and she spoke to the person who founded the organization who lives in New York and stuff. So that was a great story. She did a really good job.
So it would be viable to.
I think so. You need.
Organization.
Yes, but it's morphing a little bit from doing the profile of an animal as told to us by somebody who knows that animal well, but things can morph, things can morph. It's that is interesting if you can get the access, what you need is people you can interview. Yeah.
I have a story I want to write about. Actually, it started from last month. Someone hired me as an interpreter for the cosmetology test and translate from English to interpret it from English to Chinese. And I was disqualified. It's so difficult. It's only English. That person, the candidate, she can't read English at all.
Okay.
And then we found out that in that test at the center, there's Vietnamese, Korean, Mexican, like Spanish language. The candidates can do their own language for that test, but no Chinese.
Okay,
That's so weird because the population of Chinese in San Francisco is so big, like 20-30%. And everywhere, like in the Muni, you hear Chinese. Everything, like you don't need to know English. You could go to DMV to get the license. Everything is in Chinese papers, and they give you a coach in Chinese speaker. But they do not have these papers in Chinese. And one of my students, she said, maybe there's something dodgy happening behind. Maybe there's those agencies who give you the test or training, just want to earn the money, and they just don't help they're Chinese, but they don't help the Chinese to like asking for Chinese paper in the test center. And there's a money thing is that related to this part, right? Money.
So
it's like kind of like big story behind why there's no Chinese for this test. And I happen to have someone she failed like years ago, failed in this test, and she wanted to do it again. But the terms of it is so difficult, it's all medical terms. You could never pass the test if you don't. Even like the native English speakers may not pass the test, because it's all medical. So that's a story I really want to write about. And like this person, I think it's interesting because she failed once, she wanted to do it again. And the story behind is anything related to, I don't know, bigger story.
Yeah.
Why there's no Chinese, if maybe Chinese really doesn't want to help Chinese with this test. Or it's the competition of your industry or what?
Yeah. Challenge is, this is investigative. The challenge is getting people to actually tell you the truth. It's a lot of work. They may not want to just, you can certainly talk to these, person who failed the test before who wants to take it again. And you could air their concern that this is not fair and there's some ultimate, an unknown motive as to why they don't make it fair, why they don't make the translation available. But to follow the story further, you'd have to talk to the people who are responsible for that. Would they want to honestly tell you why they don't make it available in Chinese? We've had a student who wanted to report on scandal in the Rams in one of the CCSF teams, and of course, they wouldn't talk about it at all, especially not to students. So the challenge of investigative is to to get the people who you want to tell you, like, this situation doesn't make sense. Why is this situation happening? So if you find you can get that kind of access to somebody, then I'd say it's a good story. Otherwise, it may be very frustrating to you and eventually to your audience, because then you would, if you report on a story where the next question everybody is asking is, what's going on here? Why is it this way? And you can't go any further. It's kind of frustrating for you, for sure, and maybe for your readers, who's like, well, okay, but why, and why didn't she follow it up? Well, she tried to follow it up like hell, and they would never call her back, or they would never tell her or something, which might be the way it's happening. So I'd say for that story idea, try to see if if somebody involved in that testing would actually talk to you. you know. Even if they're going to give you some, you know, unsatisfactory answer, that would already be more than no answer, which is possibly what you'll get. Investigative is hard to do unless if you're from the Chronicle or NBC News, then you know, it's like there's more motivation to make your, you know, to defend yourself. But to City College students, it's kind of like, why should I bother talking to them if they're going to make my life more difficult? So, but investigative is good, you know. And then the other problem is, well, it's not a problem, but it's you know, you may have your ideas about why this is going on, and you may have questions. But you also have to find people who will pose those questions, you know, because you as the reporter can't go in with the questions necessarily. You're going to have, you know, perhaps the person that you're working with, the student who needs the translation, might, you know, pose these questions or speculate as to why this test is so, you know, unfair, right? So you check it out if you want to pursue that story. I'd say see if you can get someone to go on record as to why there is no Chinese version of this. You know, given the huge population that would be interested, given that so many other services are available in everybody's language, why not that? You know. See, yeah. Okay, others? No. All right, this has to come within, well, coming on Tuesday, right? So if you haven't had a chance to talk about it now, definitely I can give you feedback when I look at these. And what I'll say on Tuesday is, as soon as I see it, almost every story will work. I may have my, you know, fears about whether it'll come together. And the way that you could solve all of my fears would be by just getting the contact, talking to the person. So it's like as soon as it comes in, I'm basically going to say, go for it and see. And my comments might just try to, you know, suggest an additional narrative or another angle or something. But so consider your idea is already accepted, and you should start calling and find out who you're going to interview. Okay, because that's always the crunch. People with a good idea, you can't get to the person, and 2 weeks are gone. Okay. Carmen?
If it is for like an event, does it have to be someone that is in the event, or could it just be like a participant?
It depends on how knowledgeable the participant is, that's all. Yeah. So what you want to avoid is somebody who doesn't know anything or doesn't have a real stake in it. But a participant in an event can have a real stake, and they can know a lot about it. So that's it. You know, if it's just you know, someone who's drifting through, that's useless. But if it's somebody who goes there every year and competes, then that's a great angle. You know, that's for sure. So could be good. AP. Okay, 3 things we want to talk about today related to this chapter. First of all, the Associated Press style book and its impact on formatting in broadcasting and also print, but we're broadcasting. So there's a mini style book in the textbook. There's also some extra examples that we can look at today. There's stuff about writing leads, and there's what they call the killer bees in this chapter, which are just, you know, more sorts of guidelines to be careful about. The killer bees. So let's just look at that. And I think now that you have done even writing your radio reader and wrap, you are now more aware of the type of thing that we're trying to write right now, and what these killer bees, these 4 or 5 things to watch out for. Hopefully that'll connect with what you're doing. So first of all, accuracy. So were there any challenges about being accurate when you wrote your reader and wrap? Did you ever find yourself trying to write it in a certain way and then stop and say, hang on, that's not exactly what they said in the article, or something like that? Especially since I told you, don't change, I said, don't use the exact wording in the article, but, you know, report the same way. JP, you were like making a noise there. Was that something you felt?
My original rap was about like the this landslide near Big Sur, and then I started going into like a number of detail, like the nearby bridge being shut down, and I just thought it didn't make any sense.
Okay, so that you were like veering off into
Yeah.
nonsense.
More like about the bridge than about the landslide.
Got you. Okay. So, and that would be a draft, and you were able to, you completely changed, right?
Yeah.
Finally, because you just said, okay, too much, I'll deal with another one. Okay. I think you can always back up and in your editing sort of bring it back on track, but I don't know. Anybody else find the demands of writing a narrative, an interesting rap, pull you away from reporting accurately? Yeah, Nick?
I was thinking of more going into the story of maybe adding in a brief editorial, like on the meat incident. So maybe going, like talking more about it, like saying, I don't know, but at the time of writing it, I was thinking of like going more story.
Okay, but you finally didn't have room for that, right? And,
Yeah. It's like
And
stick.
those are good instincts anyway, because these readers and raps here were there was so little time, you just had to report, the facts. And generally newspapers divide themselves up into news, opinion, editorial, right? So we try to keep those things separate, So we're writing news right now, and you wanted to add in some editorial, and what your instinct said, don't go there, and it's a good instinct. Yeah. It's a different type of writing. Be tight. How many people felt that they really had to squeeze what they wrote into a very tight space, right? Yeah, Corey?
I felt like first I was doing it, I was like, oh, 25 seconds. Okay, I gotta add some stuff. Damn, 32 seconds. Okay, now I gotta shorten it up a little bit. So it was just a constant.
Back and forth kind of. Yeah. The textbook says an interesting thing. It says most of the time when you're writing in school, it's like a page thing, and you've got to write 5 pages, and you're just like spinning it out to get that extra page in, And then you get something like this assignment, which is like you got 6 lines or 8 lines, squish it all in there. Jenny?
I noticed that I really had to cut out a lot of preferred floral language and word
interesting.
choice that would make it really sound nice, but it kept on running over time. So
Got you.
slash.
Good. Well, that's another good instinct, though, because again, when you're writing for people hearing, sometimes the florality of it can, make it harder to understand. So it's a good instinct there. Yeah. So, the funny thing is, as we go on and write longer pieces, your next big thing is a radio feature. It's like a minute and a half long. It's equally tight, but you're just adding more information. But what you'll find is audiences, especially in broadcasting, when you start to pad, they go to sleep. They lose interest. That's the thing. They're used to very concise, easy to grasp, vivid, active writing, And typically when you pad, it starts to become wishy-washy and stuff, and you just lose them. So it's like even when you have more room to write, you have to fill it up with more efficient, spare, vivid prose. So it's a challenge always. Clarity, whatever. Active. So that comes down to active sentence structures, at least as a preferred mode of writing, let's say. And the other thing is verbs and nouns that are vivid, that create a kind of an image in people's minds. I'm not saying that you have to strip everything you write down. I'm not saying that you mechanically have to always use an active sentence structure, but I think the idea is that you could start out with that. These are your building blocks, and from there, as you want to create other effects, you can vary, you can change stuff up, You can also, when you've written something that's a tangled up mess, the easiest way to untangle it is to come back to the work we did on sentence structure and, active voice. You're reading this as like, oh, when I read this out, this is hard to say. Well, check it out. Is it in active structure? Is it, subject, verb, object. And that can put you back on the right track very quickly. To the point where people who write professionally all the time this type of stuff just write that way. And that's something to maybe train yourself into. Pace and flow, I mean, read it out loud. Read it out loud, that's the main thing. Be quick, get to the important information fast, and that relates to writing leads, which is the topic that we go into more deeply today.
What was before be quick?
Be smooth.
Okay.
You were smooth. Pace and flow, like read it out loud to see how smooth you can be. Okay, the story structure. So that's the end of the killer bees, which relates back to stuff we said for a couple of weeks. So story structure, if you haven't learned this already, it's almost a cliche of journalism, is the inverted pyramid structure, where you start out with the important information. The next stuff you read in the story is like the details, and once you get down to the bottom of the pyramid, you're working with minor details, information that could easily be left out. So there's a little graphic I just picked out of Google Images. The whole point of this structure was that in print, in newspapers, you didn't necessarily know how much space your story would get in the final edition of the newspaper. So journalists wrote in a way that if there wasn't much space, the editor could chop off this part of the story and no one would need to rewrite the first part. If there was more space to fill in the newspaper because they didn't sell enough advertising or something, they could run the whole story, And so it was really as a kind of a print media technique, However, it has the advantage in broadcasting of getting to the important information as quickly as possible. Who, what, when, where, why, how, right? The 5 W's and the H, which is, you've heard all about that. So those most often are in the lead. We'll see there's some little variations later in the chapter. So this kind of structure still holds in print. Our textbook doesn't go into it, but I say that another kind of structure that we see very often in broadcasting starts with a small incident. The story expands out to a context or to a general issue, and the story often comes back to something as narrow and as maybe even the same incident. So an example of this would be a change to the tax code or something like that. 10% less in the earned credit or something like that on taxes. What a boring story, right? But broadcasting would go to somebody who is affected by this, somebody who's just getting by, depends on that money. And you'd start with that, So here's single mom with her kid at home, kid's sick or whatever, and it's like, whatever. And the story eventually zooms out to what's making things worse for her. Damn, they've just changed this tax credit that she used to get, right? And then you can spend the mid part of your story going into important details for sure. And then you come back down, maybe you finish the story on, so you could talk, maybe at this point you'll hear about, a new bill that's before the legislature to, do something to provide other support. And then you could go back to the person and her, the single mom and her baby or something. So very, very often broadcast stories are told in this structure, kind of like a diamond structure, as an alternative to that inverted pyramid, which is a print structure. However, they're both really useful because typically if you went and did this type of story as a TV package for a local station, which I could easily see, at the end of the day, you'd come back and you'd turn it into a web story, which is essentially a print story, and you'd have to go here. So when you took that story, which began with, single mom in her kitchen, you would come back here and the first things you would say would be, today the legislature passed a bill that would cut, the tax credit by 10%. They did this to save money and so on and so forth. And then you would go in your next paragraph down or something, you would go to single mom who's affected by that or something. So that would be the pyramid way of doing it, the inverted pyramid. So you see the difference? So that's just one of the points that is developed in this chapter pretty well. Okay, so that's the inverted pyramid, all right? Next up, the lead. So we said that by far the most important part of any story is the lead. So the first thing that is said in your script. And what's called a hard lead or a summary lead would contain the 5 W's and the H right at the top of the story. So what matters most would be those things. As it says here in point number 2, this is an interesting exercise, given that we said and we saw that, fame, or like one of the 10 people that Google has selected as the up and coming gamers, Oddity, why are they carrying 40 pounds of books or something? Conflict, people taking this test, want to have the test given in their own language. People giving the test don't want to do that. There's kind of a conflict there. Immediacy, that tax cut could affect me just as well as it could affect that mom, Immediacy, does it connect to you too somehow, Whatever. Impact, I don't know about that. But so try mapping those interest elements onto the story that you're telling. Do you find, perhaps the oddity of it is the thing that's the most compelling? So then you begin with the oddity. It's like she's 65 years old and she's struggling with 65 pounds of books. How come? Or something like that. And then you can get into, this is just one of the many things you'll see at the Fort Mason book sale in support of the library, put on by friends of the library every year, and so on and so forth, So that could be a way of developing, of orienting your lead based on something like that. So main point here is that leads are important. You spend most of your time, it's easy enough to put the facts into a clear and orderly structure, but you spend a lot of time writing and rewriting your lead to be as effective as possible. No emphasis on the word where. Build with the basics. So here's just the advice that, depending on how you write, I say write any damn way it comes out of you, and then you can refine things. If you're a very methodical person, you may want to build with building blocks, so that you start your sentences with, who is doing what, to whom or where or whatever. But, again, subject, verb, object. If you're not the type of person who likes to write as though you're putting together a little construction, write any damn way it'll come out, and then go back and look at it and say, okay, here's the structure that I think I want. How can I pull this into line? You see lead length and readability. Read everything out loud to see how it sounds and feels. So types of leads, okay. So the thing that we just described, your summary lead, also known as a hard lead, it just summarizes what happened. Usually that's your 5 W's and an H. So you're trying in your one sentence or sometimes 2 sentences just to get the basics across in a clear way. And if you can, make it so that it's obvious to the reader why they should care. If you just read your newspaper, every one of those stories will have a summary lead. That's the way it is, basically. And maybe next class we'll bring in some newspapers or something and put that proposition to the test. Some other types of leads to grab people's attention. talk about someone with a recognizable name and put that name early on, okay? So this maps to the idea of fame, that people are interested in famous people. So, you know, how many stories begin with President Trump right now? It's almost tiresome. The interesting action lead. So that was my old lady with 65 pounds of books or something. Into the lead, try to fold in, you know, the action which catches people's attention. This works when also it's nobody really important, right? It's like old lady. So we don't know her name. We don't know, even knowing that her name was, you know, Rose Smith or something like that. It wouldn't help because we don't know who Rose Smith is, right? So instead of starting with Rose Smith has 65 pounds, instead what we're using is maybe her, maybe multiple people. We're going with the action. What are they doing instead of who are they? So that can help you out in that one. Events, focus on what happened at the event. I mean, we're actually doing something like that. So it's maybe in this case, let's say you're reporting on a fire, and you could start with a summary lead, you know, a 5-alarm fire involving residents of an apartment complex at the corner of Valencia and 22nd, so on and so forth. Instead, you can begin with what happened at the event. You know, people were tossing their possessions out of the window to bystanders below before fleeing the fire at 22nd and Valencia last night. You know, so you can start with what is interesting and happening right there and then, instead of starting with the summary factual aspect of it. You can go both ways, right? You can do either way, but you may enjoy writing this type of lead more than the summary lead. So as long as you know what you're doing, that's the important thing. Second day lead. Oh yeah, Jenny, question on this one?
With the example you just provided about the fire at 22nd and Valencia, I was just thinking backward to one point with regard to interesting action. I mean, would that example not fall more so under interesting action? Because here you've got people tossing things out of the window to bystanders. And yes, the fire is an event, but I'm just trying to think of, like, I'm trying to more solidly imagine.
Yeah. I mean, maybe my taxonomy is like blurred or something, and they're both, you know, the interesting action and the report on what happened at the event. I mean, they're kind of both the same thing, I guess. Maybe my examples I haven't thought them out enough to show distinctly what's different about it. But I think the idea is that rather than going with facts, you're going with the type of thing that people, you know, did, or you might see them doing if you were there. So interesting action or what happened, I'm folding them together, I guess, for better or for worse. So probably for worse. Second day leads is, you know, in any kind of news operation, you're often updating what's come out before. So, for instance, I had a student from San Francisco State whose job at KGO was basically a story would air, and then they'd go back and bring it back into, they were using Pro Tools or whatever, so they'd bring it back in there and they'd cut out all of the time-specific information, like today or whatever like that. They'd cut that out and they'd put a new lead on it, which would have the latest information. So it would be, 14 more bodies discovered at the earthquake, and then they could play the rest of the story as it stood. So that's something that you wind up doing pretty often, is updating a story. Even as an intern, you could do that type of stuff. All right, some ways that leads can spin out of control and ways that you can get back in control. The U leads, so there are some types of leads to stay away with. The one that talks to you directly can be problematic. So you know you want that check, but you can't get it. And some people are gonna like listen to that and say, I don't want that check. Why are you talking to me that way? So avoid that type of assumption about your audience. A question. Did you ever wonder what it would be like to live in a penthouse in New York City? No. Buzz off, okay? You've lost them again, all right? You've assumed that they care about that, and maybe they don't. So recraft that lead, you know, so that you're not making assumptions about how people are going to answer. Quotes. Stay away from quotes because it won't be clear that you're actually quoting somebody. They will think that you are saying what you actually think, you know. So you own the quote if it's part of your lead, and you don't really want that unless it's pretty anodyne. And then in that case, like, why use a quote in that place? So watch out for quotes, you know, move them further back in the story. Imagine you were a single mother and, you know, a tax cut came or something like that. It's like they may not follow you there again. So watch out for that. How to order the rest of your pyramid is, if we've dealt with leads here and you're putting most of your effort into the leads, the next thing really is just to decide, okay, what are the important details that you're going to put into the rest of your story? And how are you going to organize them? And typically what you want to do is keep looking at your lead and see, okay, what is it that I've said in my lead and what do I need to keep following up on? You know, inevitably, in order to make a single sentence of a lead, you're leaving out a lot of stuff. Maybe you're leaving hanging certain questions, you know. What type of stuff were they throwing out the window? You know, was the fire so bad that they actually had to do that? Like, what if they were dropping like big heavy stuff? So that may lead you to details that need to come afterwards. So in the rest of your pyramid, you're trying to fit those details in that always relate to your lead. You know, and inevitably you're cutting stuff out. And so how can you decide what to cut out? Is like, does it back up what's in your lead already? Does it connect to it? If it doesn't, throw it away. And sometimes you can have to leave fun stuff that you can't do that. So support the lead. That's basically what it is. It's, as you examine each fact, see how it relates to the lead and determine if it helps drive home the point in that top sentence. As you can see, this is the type of thing where you'll be writing and rewriting. You'll rewrite the lead many times, and then you'll go on and look for what's in the rest of the story. You know, and so the more time you spend with it, the better it'll get. The less time you spend with it, the sloppier it is, the less tight it is, and you know, the harder to keep people's attention with it. Descending order of importance. Well, here the idea is just, you know, by the time you get to the end of the story, it's the least important stuff. That's the nature of the pyramid. Use small chunks. You'll notice in the broadcast scripts that you read, that I give you, or that you write, and coming down into the web adaptations that we do generally, you'll see that web stories that are converted from broadcast scripts, they're usually 2-3 sentence long paragraphs. They're really sort of one idea, another idea, another idea, and you're doing your best just to make those ideas as clear as possible and then move on. So small chunks really help people, you know, especially when we get to like writing for the web. People scan stories a lot, you know, they don't read the whole thing. A good half of your audience actually reads from beginning to end, but that leaves another half of your audience that really just scans stories. And so you want to give them stuff in easy to digest chunks, and where they know what's coming. So they know what to attend to and what not to. And finally, which is a good way to finish this lecture, is know when to stop, all right? Because people have limited attention span, it's totally normal. And, you know, give them, luckily on the web, you give them chances to interact, right? Especially if you've got someone moderating your chat room. It's important. Too much information can just turn people off. So there you go. That was too much information, probably. Oh, man. There's some videos up there in the modules that they're actually, at least one of them is decent. So check it out if you, where are they? Oh, damn, I just closed it. What are the first modules? So here they are, video and multimedia. And next class, we could take a look at the AP style book stuff. It'll take maybe 10 minutes maximum, but we'll see additional rules about how to write numbers, how to write addresses, how to write titles and things for broadcast. It's different than print. And the AP is the Associated Press. They are the authority on this. PR companies use it just as much as journalists use it. So we'll take a look at it and do some quick exercises with it. And that's it. Have a good weekend.